You will need your knitting with a mistake in it, a small set of circular knitting needles, or a tapestry needle and yarn. So, what do you do if you discover you've made a mistake quite a few rows back? The temptation is to just rip your knitting off your needles in the hope of being able to get your stitches back on again once you've undone the mistake. But unfortunately, it's really hard to get the stitches back on the knitting needle without twisting or losing a few. Thankfully, there's a lifeline which basically threads your stitches back onto some yarn, keeping them lined up in the right direction, and then you can pop those back onto a knitting needle. So, with your work lying flat, identify where your mistake is. Now go to the row of knitting below where your mistake is and identify the V-shapes. Then, using a thin set of circular knitting needles, these are 2.5mm, insert the point under the right side of the first V. Then move along to the next V, to the left, and insert your needle under the right leg of the V. And keep moving along the row, picking up the right side of each V until the end. So I've got to the end, I can pull my needle through. And at this point, you can happily rip the stitches off until you're stopped by the lifeline. And now you're ready to redo your knitting, or this row's purling. And you can knit directly from the circular needles back onto the right-sized ones, because the size of the stitch is determined by the needle that you're knitting onto. If you don't have small circular needles, you can use a bodkin or a blunt tapestry needle, threaded up with smaller, more slippy thread than the wool you're using, and preferably in a contrasting, easy-to-see colour. And I like to use embroidery thread, but apparently dental floss works well. Then do exactly the same thing and pick up the right leg of each V in the row of stitches. And you can now rip these stitches back. Once you've ripped your stitches back, you'll now need to get them back onto your knitting needle. This is your working wool, so make sure that's at the pointy end of your knitting needle. And just slide them back on in that direction. And then you can pull that coloured thread away, and you're all set to reknit.